Say it again. Say it again and watch what happens.
Say it again. Say it again and watch what happens. Tun's voice cracked across the table like a whip. 40 guests at Ella's 28th birthday party went quiet around them, forks still in the air. Folisade had only made a small joke. Tund had told the table their landlord raised the rent on both their apartments, and she'd laughed and corrected him. "I don't live in that apartment anymore," she said, because she'd moved out 3 months ago. He knew that. A small thing. But his hand had already found her wrist under the table before she finished the sentence. "Tund, you're hurting me. Then stop embarrassing me." The slap came a minute later, loud enough that the whole room heard it over the lowered music. Folisade's head turned with the force of it. Her hand flew to her cheek. She didn't cry. Her jaw locked shut before her eyes could betray her. Tund Adebayo was Folisade's boyfriend of 2 years, a logistics consultant who had moved to Beijing around the same time she had, charming in every room he walked into, the kind of man who made strangers laugh within 30 seconds of meeting him. A year and a half ago, on a black ice night in February, Folisade had been walking home from a late shift when a man grabbed her from behind near the entrance to her apartment block, dragging her toward the gap between 2 buildings before she'd even understood what was happening. She remembered fragments more than the whole: a hand over her mouth, cold brick against her back, her own muffled screams swallowed by her attacker's palm. Then Tund was there. He'd been on his way to meet her, running late, and came around the corner just in time, shouting, grabbing the man by his jacket, wrestling him off her before the attacker bolted into the dark. He'd held her on that pavement while she shook and cried, told her she was safe now, walked her home with his arm around her the whole way, and stayed on her couch that night because she'd been too frightened to be alone. She had loved him before that night. After it, she loved him with something closer to devotion, the bottomless gratitude reserved for the person who stood between you and the worst night of your life. He saved me. People who save your life are allowed mistakes. People who save your life deserve patience. That was the wall behind every bruise she let herself excuse in the 18 months that followed. A grip too tight on her arm during an argument 8 months in. A shove against a wall 4 months after that, hard enough to leave a mark she covered with a long sleeve for a week. Each time, he cried afterward. Each time, he promised it would never happen again. Each time, she believed him because of the debt she carried underneath everything else, the one she didn't know how to stop repaying. Tund raised his hand again. A grip closed around his wrist before it landed. The man holding it had been sitting alone the entire evening at a table near the back wall, plain dark sweater, sleeves pushed up, the kind of quiet presence nobody in the room had noticed until exactly this moment. "Touch her again," he said, calm and unhurried, "and you'll regret it longer than tonight." Tund wrenched his arm free, his face going red with fury rather than shame. "Get your hands off me," he swung at the man. It was a bad punch, wild and untrained. The man sidestepped it easily, caught Tund by the collar, and put him on the floor in one motion. Tund scrambled back up swinging again, and this time the response was faster. A strike to the ribs that folded him over, a hand on the back of his neck that drove him down across the edge of the table hard enough to send glasses skidding. He hit the floor and stayed there, gasping, one arm wrapped around his side. The room had gone completely silent. Someone near the back was filming on their phone. Ella, the birthday girl, her own cake still sitting with its candles unlit, rushed over and pulled Folisade into her arms, both of them shaking. The man straightened his sweater and looked down at Tund without any particular expression. Then he turned to Folisade. "Do you want to stay here?" he asked. Not Tund. Not the room. Her.
"No," she said.
He held out his hand, not grabbing for her, just offering it. "Come with me." She didn't take it. She walked past it on her own feet, toward the exit, because she needed this one decision to be entirely hers. Behind her, Tund was shouting, struggling up off the floor. "Folisade, don't you dare. Don't you dare walk out of here with him. I will deal with you." She kept walking. The man followed her out without a word. Outside, the Beijing night was sharp and clear, and the moment they were far enough from the entrance, Falisade's legs simply stopped holding her together the way they had all evening. She turned into him, not deciding to, just turning, the way you turn toward warmth, and broke down completely against his chest, her hands fisting the front of his sweater.
He didn't step back.
He let her shake against him, one hand coming up slowly to rest between her shoulder blades. "It's been like that," she said into his chest, the words coming out broken. "Since the night he saved me. He saved my life, and I thought that meant I owed him." "Don't," he said, quiet but firm. "You don't have to explain it to me. I need you to understand it wasn't always like this." "I know what love can do to people," he said. "I don't need the story to know you didn't deserve what just happened in there." She looked up at him, eyes wet, and something in the certainty of his voice. No judgment, no demand for an explanation she wasn't ready to give, loosened something tight in her chest. "I'll take you home," he said. "I don't want to go home." Her voice cracked. "He knows where I live." "Trust me," he said. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded, and he opened the car door for her himself. The car took them to a hotel in the center of the city, a 5-star tower Falisade had walked past 100 times without ever once imagining she'd walk through its doors. The staff straightened the moment he entered, addressing him with a deference that told her everything about who he was without a single word needing to be said. He arranged a room without checking any list. At the elevator, he turned to her. "You'll be safe here. Nobody reaches this floor without going through people who answer directly to me." "I don't even know your name," she said. "Si Qingyao." Falisade. He nodded once, like he was filing it away somewhere permanent. Then the doors closed between them, and she rode up alone, holding the sleeve of her dress where his hand had rested against her back, feeling something that, for the first time in longer than she could remember, wasn't fear. He walked her to a door 2 rooms down from his own, the lock clicking open the moment his keycard touched it. "This one's yours," he said. "I'm just there." He pointed to a door across the hall. "If you need anything in the night, call the front desk and they'll come straight to me." She stood in the doorway of the room, soft lighting, a bed turned down, the kind of quiet luxury she'd never once needed to imagine for herself, and felt the first crack of thunder roll somewhere over the city outside the window. She flinched. Hard. "I don't want to be alone tonight," she said quickly before she could talk herself out of it. "I know how that sounds. I've never liked storms. Since I was a child." He looked at her for a moment, reading something in her face that had nothing to do with the thunder and everything to do with not wanting to be left in a quiet room with her own thoughts. "Then you won't be," he said simply and stepped inside, closing the door behind them both. He called down to the kitchen himself, ordering more than she would have asked for. Soup, rice, something warm with ginger in it, a pot of tea, and within 20 minutes a cart arrived at the door, along with a folded set of soft pajamas and a robe still in its plastic, sized correctly without him ever having asked. "How did you know my size?" she asked, looking at the robe. "I didn't. I told them to bring a few sizes." He set the tray down on the small table by the window. "Eat something." She ate slowly at first, then faster, realizing somewhere around the second spoonful that she hadn't eaten anything at the party at all. He sat across from her, not eating himself, just present, refilling her tea without being asked the moment her cup ran low. "Nobody's done this for me," she said quietly, halfway through the bowl, "since my parents died. Not like this. Not paying attention to the small things without being asked." "How long ago?" he asked. 6 years. Car accident. Both of them, same night. She turned the cup slowly between her hands. "I came to Beijing 2 years after that. Needed somewhere far enough away that I couldn't drive past their old house by accident." He didn't offer the easy condolences people usually offered. He just listened, the way he seemed to do everything fully without performing it. Outside, the rain picked up, drumming hard against the window, and she found herself sitting closer to him than the width of the small table technically allowed, close enough that when their hands both reached for the teapot at the same time, neither of them pulled back right away. "How do you know?" she asked quietly. "What love can do to someone? You said it outside, like you knew exactly what you were talking about." He was quiet for a moment, his jaw tightening slightly before he answered. I was with someone for 3 years, he said. I built things around her the way you build things around someone you think you'll spend your whole life with. She slept with 2 of my own employees while we were together. I found out by accident. A message left open on a tablet she'd borrowed. What did you do? Made excuses for her. For almost a year after I knew. His voice stayed level, but something underneath it had gone very still. I told myself she was confused. That she still loved me, and the rest was noise. I kept her close because the version of leaving felt bigger than the version of staying, even with everything I knew. He looked at her. I left the day I realized I was the only one in the relationship still pretending it was a relationship. What happened to her? She's not in the city anymore, he paused. That's the whole story I have for her. I don't keep more of it than I need to. Palisade looked at him for a long moment, something in her chest loosening even further, the particular relief of being understood by someone who wasn't explaining her pain back to her, just sitting in the shape of it with her. So when you said you knew what love could do, she said, you weren't just being kind.
No, he said.
I wasn't. Her hand found his on the table without her fully deciding to. He turned his palm up to meet it. Her phone rang on the side table, the screen lighting up with a name she didn't recognize immediately, Zhang. ESQ, a lawyer's office she remembered from paperwork 2 years back when she'd first set up her residency in Beijing. She frowned and picked it up. Hello. The voice on the other end was brisk, professional, slightly confused by her tone. Miss Palisade, this is Zhang's office. We're calling to confirm the loan disbursement went through successfully this afternoon. $340,000 transferred to the account on file, co-signed against your residency documents as collateral. Is there an issue? Palisade went very still. I didn't take out a loan, she said slowly. A pause on the other end, papers shuffling. Miss Palisade, the application has your signature on the co-signing document, dated 4 months ago. Mr. Adebayo's loan. The funds were released to him directly, but your signature is required as the secondary guarantor since the application used both your names and your residency status as the qualifying basis. I never signed anything. Another pause, longer this time. I would recommend you come into the office tomorrow morning. There appears to be some confusion that needs to be resolved directly. The line went dead before she could ask anything else. She sat there holding the phone, her whole body gone cold, the rain still hammering the window behind her. What is it? Qingyao said. Not a question. A demand wrapped gently enough to sound like one. He took out a loan. Her voice came out hollow. 340,000. Using my name. My signature is on it. Did you sign anything? I don't, she stopped. Pressed her fingers against her temples, the memories surfacing slowly, sickeningly, the way memories do when your mind has been protecting you from them. 4 months ago, he took me out to celebrate a work thing of his. He kept pouring me wine even after I told him I'd never really drank before, told me 1 glass wouldn't hurt, that I should relax and enjoy myself for once. She looked up at Qingyao, her eyes filling. There were papers on the table that night. He said it was just a formality for his apartment lease. He had me sign at the bottom while I wasn't thinking clearly. I barely remember signing anything at all. She put her face in her hands. He used me, she said, the words coming out broken. All of it. He used the night he saved me to keep me close enough to take everything else. Qingyao moved his chair around the table, so he was beside her instead of across from her, close enough that his shoulder was solid against hers. Palisade, he said, and waited until she lifted her head and looked at him. I'm going to deal with him. Completely. And I'm going to help you fix this, the loan, the document, all of it. You will not carry this alone for 1 more day. You don't even know me, she said, voice shaking. Why would you? I don't need to know you for very long to know what's owed to you, he said. I watched a room of 40 people freeze tonight while a man hit you in front of them. I'm not going to be one more person in your life who watches and does nothing. She looked at him. Really looked, past the calm and the control and the quiet she still didn't fully understand the source of, and reached for him, this time not breaking down, just needing to be held. He wrapped both arms around her and held on, the rain still falling outside, the city lights blurred soft through the wet glass, and neither of them said anything else for a long time. He took the case to court. The case moved faster than anyone expecting an ordinary loan dispute would have predicted, though Folisade understood by now that very little around Si Qingyao moved at an ordinary pace. Within a week, his own legal team, 3 lawyers who showed up to the first meeting in suits that probably cost more than the loan itself, had pulled the original loan documents, the bank's records, and a statement from the restaurant's sommelier confirming Folisade had been served wine repeatedly that night despite saying more than once that she didn't really drink. "Your signature is genuine." The lead lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Lawyer, who said carefully, setting the documents down, "That's not in dispute. What's in dispute is whether you had the legal capacity to understand what you were signing, and whether he deliberately created the conditions to make sure you didn't." "I don't even remember signing it," Folisade said. "I remember him pouring the wine. I remember laughing about something. I don't remember reading a single word on that page." "That's exactly the case we're building," Lawyer who said. "Fraudulent inducement. He didn't forge your hand. He engineered the moment, so your hand wouldn't know what it was agreeing to." The hearing was set for a Thursday morning at the Beijing Civil Court, a squat gray building that smelled like old paper and floor polish. Folisade arrived early with Ella beside her, gripping a thermos of coffee like a weapon, and found Qingyao already waiting near the entrance, arms crossed, his expression unreadable as always, though something in the set of his shoulders told her he hadn't slept particularly well either. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I know," he said. "I wanted to." Tund arrived 20 minutes later in a freshly pressed suit, his own lawyer trailing behind him with the harried expression of a man who'd had a very difficult week of phone calls. He spotted Folisade across the courthouse steps and crossed toward her before anyone could stop him. "You think you're clever," he said, low and sharp, "bringing your new sugar daddy to humiliate me in court." "I'm bringing the truth, Tund," she said. "You're the one who's about to be humiliated by it. You sign that form. With your own hand. Nobody forced your fingers to move. You got me drunk on purpose, knowing I never drink, and slid a $120,000 loan application under my nose while I couldn't see straight. That's not a signature, Tund. That's a trap with my name on it. Prove it." "I already am," she said. "In there." In about 10 minutes. Tund's lawyer, overhearing this and visibly regretting every decision that had led him to this client, tugged gently at his sleeve. "Mr. Adebayo, perhaps we should head inside." "Get off me," Tund snapped, yanking his arm free with such force that he knocked his own briefcase clean out of his lawyer's other hand. It hit the courthouse steps and burst open, papers fanning out across the stone directly toward a pigeon pecking at crumbs nearby, which startled and took off in a flurry of indignant flapping straight past Tund's face. Tund yelped and stumbled backward, catching himself hard on the railing, in full view of 2 court clerks who'd just walked out for a smoke break and paused to watch with open amusement. Ella, behind Folisade, made a small, choked sound into her thermos that was very clearly a laugh she was failing to suppress. "That bird did that on purpose," Tund said, straightening his jacket, breathing hard. "I don't think the pigeon has a personal vendetta against you, Tund," Folisade said, and for the first time in 18 months, she laughed at something involving him without an ounce of fear underneath it. Beside her, Qingyao said nothing, but the corner of his mouth moved in that small, familiar way that wasn't quite a smile, but was close enough that she'd learned to recognize it as one. Inside, the hearing was almost anticlimactic compared to the pigeon incident. Lawyer, who laid out the timeline with crisp precision, the dinner reservation paid for on Tund's card, the sommelier's signed statement confirming Folisade had declined wine twice and been told by Tund to just relax and have fun for once. The loan application timestamped at 11:47 p.m., well past the point in the evening the sommelier testified she had stopped forming complete sentences. Tund's lawyer argued weakly that intoxication wasn't legally provable after the fact. Lawyer, who responded by producing the restaurant's own till receipt showing the volume of wine ordered for the table that night against Folisade's body weight on her medical records, alongside an expert toxicologist's written opinion on what that volume would have done to her judgment and memory. The judge, a tired-looking man in his 60s who had clearly seen every flavor of human dishonesty cross his courtroom over the decades, did not take long. The court finds the loan agreement void on the grounds of fraudulent inducement, he said. The defendant deliberately impaired the plaintiff's capacity to understand the document she signed for the explicit purpose of securing funds in her name. The defendant, Mr. Adebayo, is held solely liable for the full repayment of $120,000 plus penalties. The plaintiff's name will be formally cleared from all loan records and credit liability. Tun's face went the color of old paper. Ella grabbed Falisade's hand under the table and squeezed so hard it nearly hurt, both of them blinking back tears that had nothing to do with sadness. Outside the courthouse afterward, Tund made one last attempt, catching Falisade's arm as she descended the steps. Falisade, wait, we can still sort this out, you and me, we. There's no you and me, Tund. She pulled her arm free, calm in a way that surprised even herself. There hasn't been since the night you raised your hand at me in my best friend's birthday party. The court just made the rest official. He paid for all this, Tund said bitterly, jerking his chin toward Qingyao, who stood a respectful distance away, watching without interfering. Of course you won. And that's why you chose him, because he's richer. I won, Falisade said, because you got a woman drunk on purpose and used her own signature against her. Tund. Money didn't change the facts. It just made sure the facts got heard properly. She walked away from him, down the steps, toward the car, and didn't look back once. Ella threw her arms around Falisade the second they were clear of the courthouse, half laughing, half crying. We need to celebrate. Tonight. I'm buying. You're between contracts, Ella. You're not buying anything. Fine. Details later. I'll figure it out. I'm buying, Qingyao said simply, coming up beside them. Wherever you want to go. Both of you. Ella looked between them, grinning. I like him. I formally like him now. Falisade turned to Qingyao before they reached the car. Thank you, she said quietly. For all of it. For the lawyers today, standing there the whole time without saying a word, just so I know you were there. You don't have to thank me, he said. I know I don't have to. I want to. She studied him for a moment. The same stillness, the same care in every small thing he did, never once asking for credit for any of it. Most people would have made today about themselves somehow. You just stood there and let it be about me. It was always supposed to be about you, he said. That was the whole point of coming. Falisade felt something in her chest go warm and unguarded, and she reached for his hand without thinking about it, and he took it without hesitating, and the three of them walked to the car together while Ella narrated the entire pigeon incident from memory at increasing volume. 3 weeks later, on a quiet Saturday, Qingyao set his chopsticks down across from her at the small noodle shop they'd started visiting every weekend since the night of the party. I'd like to take you somewhere, he said, with the particular directness she'd come to understand was simply how he said anything that mattered. Properly. As something other than the man who happened to be at the right table at the wrong party. Falisade looked up from her bowl. Are you asking me out, Si Qingyao? I am asking you out. She laughed, the sound surprising even her, warm and unguarded in a way she hadn't let herself be in a very long time. Across the table, the tips of his ears had gone faintly red. Yes, she said. I'll go out with you. They dated for a year. Slowly, the way Qingyao did everything. Saturday mornings at that same small noodle shop. Quiet dinners where he told her in small pieces about the business he ran and the father he answered to and the parts of his life that came with more weight than she'd expected, but never once made her flinch. She told him about her parents, about Lagos, about the version of herself that had existed before grief sent her looking for a country far enough away to start over in. He never raised his voice at her. Not once, not even on the harder days. She noticed this the way you notice the absence of a sound you didn't realize had been constant until it finally stopped. He proposed at that same noodle shop exactly 1 year after their first date. Same table, same window, a small velvet box set down beside her teacup with the same quiet directness he brought to everything. Falisade, he said. Will you marry me? Yes, she said, laughing through tears. Obviously yes. Ella, who had somehow known to be sitting 2 tables over the entire time, let out a whoop loud enough to turn every head in the shop. already filming on her phone without a trace of subtlety. They were married the following spring in a small garden ceremony. 30 guests who mattered, and not one more. Ella stood beside Folisade through the whole thing, her own life finally steadier than it had been in years, holding her best friend's hands and crying the good kind of tears, the kind neither of them had to hide from anyone anymore.
The end.